for skill migration, 25 to 33. If you have any clients that's coming in that's about 40 to 45, they usually will not satisfy for this pathway. Okay, so we would not consider them for 189 because they won't get enough points. This is the best point. So 25 to 33, you will receive 30 points on this one. Second is language ability, English language ability. So you ask them how good their English is, or we say how good your IELTS is, right? If your IELTS is 6 points, you got competent, 7 points, proficient, and superior 8 points. Now, when we talk about this, it's all 8s and all 7s and all 6s, okay? So you can't have one that's 5. The minimum requirement is competent English for 189. So if you don't have minimum requirement, then don't worry about 189. 4 7s will get you 10 points. Superior English will get you 20 points. All right, so that's the best situation. 20 points for superior English or 4 8s. Now, this one, you ask them their work experience. Right, so you ask them for the work experience. For work experience, obviously they're not going to be in Australia, so we're going to put less than 1 year. So for them, it will be 3 years, 3 to 5 years, 5 to 8 years, or more than 8 years. So here, good question. Depending on their age, usually it will be maybe 3 to 5 years. Okay. Majority of clients we see around the 25 to 33 age group will have about 3 to 5 years of work experience, which will get them the 5 points. Now, with work experience, you need to be very careful. It has to be related to their skill assessment occupation. Okay, we'll talk about skill assessment a little bit later, but for all skilled visas, so for all the skill migration visas, you must have a skill. Okay. Your work experience must be related to that skill. So if you have a skill in engineering, your work experience must be in engineering. So you need to work as an engineer for 3 to 5 years. Okay. Qualifications, usually, most of us would, come in with a bachelor's degree, okay, or recognized Australian bachelor's degree by Australian levels. So when we talk about Australian levels, we're talking about 3 to 4 year bachelor degrees. Okay, so any bachelor degree that you see is 2 years is not recognized in the Australian level. That will be a diploma in Australia. Okay, if it's 3 to 4 years, it's usually recognized. For Nepal, majority of the high level Nepal universities will be recognized, and also in most Indian universities will be recognized. The Australian study requirement for most of our students, because they've not studied in Australia, most of our clients hasn't studied in Australia, we are targeting overseas, they probably will not satisfy the Australian study requirement. This requires them to study in Australia for 2 years. So most of our clients will not be there because we're offshore, so that will be no. Specialized education degree like doctorals and masters of research, unless they have studied in Australia for that, they most likely will be also no. Now, accredited community language. This is dealing with translation. So if there is someone who has done translation to an international level, like translating Nepalese to English, you could put yes, right? But majority would have not. I'm not sure in Nepal. Do you have schools at Nepal that do these tests, Akash? You know? There is some in China that I know, and some in India that actually do those tests also to the Australian required level. But we have to check on that. But if you have done that, you can claim 5 points. If you have not, there will be a no here. Studied in regional Australia, there will be no, unless they've already studied in Australia. Now, with partner skills, you have to be very careful here. If they have a partner, they would basically lose 10 points. So if they're single, they automatically get 10 points. Right? So we'll ask a client if they're married or not. If they're single, they're very good for skill assessment. If they're not single, if they're married, you have to ask their partner on whether they're good with English, could they get 4.6s in IELTS, or if they can, you know, get a skill assessment also. But usually, you know, you want them to be single. Okay. Professional, yeah, is not worried for overseas. That's onshore study, so that will be 0. So I've just done the basics for a 25-year-old. You can see that you achieved 80 points if your English is able to get up to 8 standard, or IELTS 8 standard. But if you can't get English to IELTS 8 standard, if you could get 7, you still could make it. Okay, you still can make it if you're 25. So this is why we say it is the best time to migrate when you're around 25 to 33, because even a 4.7 in IELTS, you still have 70 points, which is where you actually satisfy for the minimum requirement of 65 points, so we can lodge for an EOI. So this is just the start. So if you meet any client, you see there is a potential for him to migrate in Australia using his skill. So if you see, for example, an engineer, IT person, or even a chef, right? You can go into this and check his points, right? So once that's set, we're going to move on, and we're going to talk a little bit about skill assessment. Each occupation, for all general skill migration, for all general skills, so 189, 190, 491, any of the, you know, using your skill to migrate, you will need a skill assessment. Okay, so you will need a skill assessment. Each occupation and skill will have its own authorities of evaluating your skill, evaluating your qualifications, and evaluating your work experience. So it will depend on the occupation. So obviously here you can see I've gone into Engineers Australia, which is the skill assessing authority for all engineers. And so if you're looking at engineers, you go to this authority. Okay, you go to this website, Engineers Australia. Now, I know some of you said, well, how do I know? How do I know that for this occupation, like an engineer, I know to find this authority? You can do that by searching SOL list. Okay, so skill occupation list. Google skill occupation list, Australia Department of Home Affairs. This will come up. On this list, on this website, type in whatever occupation you want, like for example, accountant. It will take you there and give you all the details on who assesses accountants. So for example, accountant 22111, right? This is the skill assessing authorities for accountants, right? You've got CA, Chartered Accountants, CPA Australia, and IPA, right? So these are the 3 authorities that can skill get assessed for accountants. Now, for engineers, you can put in engineer, and they'll give you. Also, this website is really useful to tell you which occupation and the visas that you can migrate on this occupation. Accountants are very broad occupation, so you could see majority of the skill visas are all on that list, okay, including 189, 190, 485, these kind of things. When you are doing student visas also, right? So when you're suggesting for student visas, you want them to go into pathways that have all of these visas in, okay? That will create a higher chance for them to migrate. So if you're not sure, go onto this website and check. All right. Any questions on this? All right, all good. So moving back.
William, okay.
Yep.
So from, let's say, if we look at from the perspective of Nepal, so most likely accountants, engineers, what other occupation is there, like who can get
So
high chance?
best occupations from Nepal, you will not be accountants, right?
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
most likely you will need extra subjects to do accountants. Best ones will be, for example, engineers, IT people,
Yeah.
right? Or you will need to look at specialized courses. So majority of other skill assessments require you to have, work experience in a field for a certain amount of time to migrate. So it depends on the occupation. Like, for example, I mentioned chef is a good one.
Yeah.
Right? Chef is a good one. But chef, you need to prove that you have worked in Nepal for 5 years as a chef. That can be easily done. But the problem is you need to have enough proof, like pay slips, superannuation, bank statements. That's very hard to find. So if you have these type of clients, so this is why I looked at Engineer Australia, because this can be done, right?
Yeah.
Offshore from Nepal, you guys can do it yourself, right? But if you got a chef, for example, that you feel is good chance, you did the points test and they have enough points, they're good at English, then give it to us, right? We'll do this skill assessment for chef for them, because there is a lot of, pay slips and evidence that you need to collect. That could be really complicated, and they might lose the opportunity because of that.
Yeah.
William?
Yep.
Yeah, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Do they have to provide any English language proficiency test score sheet regarding a skill assessment?
Yes, it depends on the skill. Like, for example, chef, they would not require English, right? As long as you understand what the person is talking about, saying. So you don't need to provide English. But for like engineers, you need to provide 4 6s. Then you've got accountants who needs 4 7s, right? So these are all the requirements. It does depend on the occupation. Okay, it does depend on the occupation. So that's why you need to go to the list. You go to the authorities and check what the requirements of the authorities are. Each occupation is different.
So we can find everything there.
Yes. So you go to the SOL list. They will give you which authority that you need to go to. Right. So for example, CPA, they'll tell you this is the website you need to go to.
Okay.
You go to that website and then you look at their requirements. Okay. Each one will have its different. Like, for example, nurses, you'll need 4 7s for nurses. And unfortunately, nurse degrees in Nepal is not recognized.
Okay.
So remember, nurse degrees in Nepal is not recognized. You will need to use other pathways for nurses. You need to take tests and all that, which will take a long time to do. This is why for Nepal, we do suggest engineers, IT can be done. Right? Chefs and all that has a lot of experience, like even carpenters, right? Carpenters, chefs, these type of technicians that had more than 5 years experience in Nepal, and they have good pay slips, work for good companies. Forward them, and we could have a look and see if we can do them. Right?
Sure.
The majority for Nepal focuses will be on, Engineers Australia or ACS, which is Computer Society, for IT.
Okay.
Also,
thank you.
Yeah, no problem. With these Australian engineers, it's the same thing. It's the requirements for Australian engineers is that you need a qualification that is either accredited in these countries, in these accords. So there's the Australian accord, the Australian qualification. So you receive the bachelor or Australian qualification in engineering that's recognized. Or the most important one is if you are on the Washington Accord. Now, Washington Accord is the largest engineering accord in engineers. It includes a lot of countries. Unfortunately, it doesn't include Nepal. It does include India. Okay, so all the universities that you graduated from India that has an engineering degree is actually recognized on Australian engineers. From Nepal, it is not recognized. But if it's not recognized, it doesn't mean that you have no chance in Australian engineers, right? This is where you will need to actually go to the next step, where you need to go do a CDR, Competency Demonstration Report. Okay, so what this report is It's basically showing that you have enough ability as an Australian engineer. Okay, you are, you're qualified as an Australian engineer. This report, we will help you write this. Right, you will need to show things like, you've done a project from start to finish. From the start, where how you got the project, to planning, to what you did on the project, to the end. Right. Usually we have professionals in doing this CDR report. Okay, but we have a very high success rate in CDR reports. So once you submit a CDR report and you've got 4 6s in IELTS, you get those approved, you get the skill assessment as an engineer. This is the most important thing for all skilled visas. Okay, so the first step for skill visas is getting this skill assessment. Once you got this skills assessment done, then you should think about the next steps of migration, which is the 189. 189 skill migration and 190 and 491, all of them require what we call an EOI, expression of interest. Have you guys seen this before? It's a very weird thing that Australia made up. Right? So to stop people from lodging visas left, right, and center, they created this thing. Okay, so to stop us from, lodging visas, they've made EOI. So what is EOI? EOI is short for expression of interest. Expression of interest is where you lodge an expression that you want, to apply for this visa, and you hope that they could give you the permission to apply. So this is not a visa application. There is no legal rules actually here, right? Because you haven't lodged a visa, you haven't lodged anything. So in other words, if you make a mistake on EOI, you can fix it anytime, right? There is no legal ramifications. This is why if you have a client, you've got their skill assessment, always get them to immediately lodge your EOI with you, right? If you're not sure with some of the part, we could fix it later, right? We can fix it later. This is where you lodge an expression of interest and you wait for the Australian government to say, yes, okay, we like you, we want you to be in Australia, and they give you permission, right? They give you permission to apply for a visa. Right? They apply for a visa. Now, for us, we will be focused on 189s. For all the skill visas, so irrelevant if it's 189, 190, or any other visa that you see for skill assessment, for each skill assessment, for each visa, lodge one EOI. Okay, so don't have an EOI that have multiple ticks or multiple visas on it. Okay, you just want one for one. Right, with that said, I'll show you what it looks like. So you start with an EOI, and you'll have all the notes of how you're going to do it. At the end, you can see this one. You submit an EOI. Right, once you submit an EOI, it will take you to a page where you put in your client details. Okay, this one I made up one, so everyone could have a look what's inside. Right, so the first part of the EOI is client details. Okay, so passport numbers, citizenship, and where you are at, this kind of thing. So you've said, yes, I provided all correctly. Now, this is the important part. You see, there's a lot of visas that you can choose from, right? You can see a lot of visas that you can choose from. So here I tick the 190 because this client applied for the 190 before. So if you want to apply for the 189, you can see you could tick both. You could see you could do both, right? Don't do that. You can do it, but you'll actually hurt your chances. You'll hurt your chances, right? So just tick one. So if you want a 189, just take 189. I know some clients said, but I want to also apply for 190. Sure. Make a new EOI and then apply for the 190. Okay. don't tick multiple. So here the client went for the 190, so we're going to tick the 190. 189, 190, it's the same thing, right? What we need to put in. Next is your family members. So whether you want to include your husband, really your partner, right? And they'll ask you whether your partner has, a skill, whether your partner is, qualified with English and all that. But here you just need to put in family member. If it's, I'm guessing most of them will not be an Australian permanent resident, so most likely it will be a no. Right? Will your company be accompanied by your partner in a future application? That will be yes, unless you don't want to include the partner. How many members, family members, the client would like to include in the future application? Yes, and your family member will be 1 if you only want to include the partner. If you want to include your son, you can put 2. Now, can you include your parents, grandparents into this application?
No idea.
No. Okay. Only husband, children. Husband and children. You can't include your parents. You can't include your grandparents. You can't include your sisters or whatever. Okay.
If we have adopted children, adopted family, so in that case,
yes, I was going to get to that. Only there is one time that you can include other members of the family if they're fully dependent on you. Okay, so in other words, let's say you have an adopted child. Yes, as long as you have an adopted certificate. Let's say you have a sister who's under 18 and you don't have your parents. In other words, you're the only family member. She's under 18, you can include her. Why? Because she will be fully dependent on you. Right? So anything you can prove they're fully dependent on the applicant, you can include it in the application. That includes even grandparents, but that will be very hard to prove. Remember that. Okay. So unless you have very strong evidence, like they're fully dependent on you, without you they will die, don't include it. Okay. Don't include it. So we'll move on. Partner qualifications. As I said, if you put a partner in, they're going to ask you for your qualifications, the birth details, and whether they have good English. Usually that means 4 6s. If they have taken an English test, you put yes, put the test date and reference number. Now, preferred location within Australia. Here, for 189s, you don't worry too much. Okay, because you can stay anywhere in Australia. Okay, so whichever state you want to put, just put it in. But don't choose multiple. Just put one in is enough. Okay, you don't need to do multiple. And they ask you, would the client be prepared to live outside an Australian capital city? You can put yes, and you can put no. I know a lot of clients would say, yeah, I'm going to put yes here. So I don't live in Melbourne and Sydney. They'll give me more chances. That's incorrect. When they're considering 189, they don't care, right? They don't care, right? You put in yes or no, it's not going to affect your application, right? Just because you're saying you're going to live in Geelong or living in another small town that's next to Melbourne is not going to affect your application for 189. Okay, so just put no if you don't really want to. There's no point putting yes here. This is your English test, so you can claim points. The higher it is, the better it is, right? This person is a competent, meaning that she will not receive any points for English, right? Your clients should have at least achieved proficient or superior, which is 7s or 8s. We could use PTE if you want. Obviously, here there's some PTE. Next, it will be qualification. It will be asking you for qualification. So put yes, and then you put in your qualification. You could put bachelor's degree, for example, master's degree, bachelor's degree, bachelor's of science, business, and technology. Majority, you'll probably put science, business, or technology. Okay, and you could put the dates and institution name, country of institution. Australian study requirement for you guys, that will be a no. and most likely they've not studied. And you can see when you put no, majority of that goes away. But if they have studied, you'll put yes. I doubt they have, so put no. Regional study, I put yes here for. Accredited community language, this is what I was talking about before, which is translations, right? So if you could have a degree in Nepalese translated into English, or English translated into Nepalese, you'll get an extra 5 points. But I'm not sure if there is any schools in Nepal that will allow you to take these tests yet. But there's certainly some in India. Here you put your skill, occupation, nomination, and the list. So she has gone for nurses. You could put accountants or engineers here, right? And you need to put yes. Does the client have a suitable skill assessment for relevant skill assessing authority? Yes. Do not lodge an EOI without the skill assessment. Okay, so that's a requirement. Do your skill assessment first, then lodge the EOI. So that will be a yes, and you'll have the name of the skill assessing authority and the reference number on the skill assessment itself. So you'll have all these details. Moving on, employment. So this is for us important. So if you have employment experience, you leave it here. You put in the name, employer name, position name, and country. So country will be Nepal. Right, and you put in the time, and it will calculate automatically how long you've worked in Nepal. Next is yes or no. Now, yeah, very important with skill, with work experience is how do we define closely related work experience? And closely related. In other words, in IT, you might be doing web developer. This is software programmer. Are they the same? Just like electrical engineer, is electrical engineer and civil engineer the same? Are they closely related? Let's say he studied electrical engineering at school, and then he went on and worked as a civil engineer. Are they the same? Are they relevant? Right? Can you claim those work experience? Here, if you click this little question mark, it will tell you all the full story. Right? But here, the most important thing we need to understand is this thing: 4-digit ANS code. So if you don't know what ANS code is, it is the code for all of the occupations. So each occupation will have a code. Okay, so every occupation will have a code. When we look at if it's closely related or not, we look at the first 4 digits. Okay, so you see these first 4, 2613. So if another occupation has 2613, 66, let's say, instead of 11, it's in the same occupation field. Okay, it's the same occupation or similar occupation. That can be accepted and you can claim similar points. Right? Now, how do we find the ANS code? How do we find this code? We go back and you search here. Right, so you see accountant, ANS code. Right, and if you want to have a look, there is another thing, external auditor. So is external auditor the same as an accountant? Let's have a look. 2212, 2211. Are they the same? 2211 and 2212. No, they are not the same. You can't claim the same points as an auditor. If you studied accountant and you worked as an auditor, you can't claim the points. They are not same occupation. Okay, so make sure you do have a look at that. This is very useful. Management accountant 2211. See, if it's management accountant, it is the same as a normal accountant. Right, 2211, 2211. The first 4 digits. The only allowance in this situation is finance manager. Can you claim finance manager? If you worked as an accountant for 2 years and then you become a finance manager for 3 years, can you claim 5 years of work experience? Answer is yes, you can. In this situation, skill progression is allowed. Okay, so if it's a clear skill progression from accountant to finance manager, or finance manager is really CFO, right? Chief Financial Officer, that's accepted. Okay, so if it's the same skill progression. Accountants does not progress to external auditor because they're not progressive, right? They're two separate occupations. Then no. All right, so this is where it does get a little bit hard. So when you're looking at their occupations, you need to make sure their occupations and work experience does connect. Professional, yeah, you don't need to worry about, just put no for it. Okay, it's another subject that you do in Australia, and you get an extra 5 points if you do. Next, partner qualifications, education history, whether your partner has studied something, Australian study requirements, regional study. That's looking at your partner. Your partner, no, sorry. Oh, yes, sorry. Yeah, yes. Okay. So that's dealing with your partner. Once that's done, you move on to declarations. Just put yes on all of them. Basically saying that you understand this is not a visa application. See, I mentioned this before. This is not a visa application, so you could change this at any time. Okay, and you could have a look at how many points you have. So once you get to this point, don't click submit here. Okay, don't click submit. You can have a look at the details. You have 60 points. All right, they've calculated you to 60 points. You could amend anything you want to amend. All right, but you should already know how much points your clients have already claimed, right? Because that's the first thing we've done with this. Right, so you should already know how many points they have, because that's what we use this calculation for. If they don't have enough points, you shouldn't even get to the EOI perspective. Now, once EOI is done and submitted, you wait for the migration office to contact you. Okay, if they do contact you and give you invitation, it means now you can apply for the visa. Usually, unless you submitted faulty documents, the visa will be granted. Okay, meaning permanent residency will be granted once you receive invitation. Once you receive an invitation, where you can apply is also on the EOI. Okay, so here, back to the EOI. So once you receive a nomination, you go back to the EOI and there is a link for you to lodge the visa. Okay, you click that link. If you have an IMI account, right? So if you have a migration account, it'll automatically go to your IMI account, and then you can apply from there. Okay, so apply from here on the IMI account. But you cannot, if you go to IMI, if you have looked at the IMI account, there is no 189 here. So you can't choose to apply for 189. You can only do it through the IMI account. Okay? Other than Hong Kong stream, which I guess you probably won't have any clients from Hong Kong. Right? But you won't see 189 usually. You should only apply from the skill select EOI, which is this page here. Right. So that's basically all of 189. Any questions or anything? Comments? 189 is the most common, really the most common and probably the most beneficial how do we say it? Skill migration visa. Okay, so the best, if you want to ask which is the best skill migration visa, it will be 189. Okay, it is the highest level, and it is available to offshore applicants, and they do nominate a huge amount of offshore applicants, right? So if I wasn't corrected, I think last invitation round for 189, we had about 15,000 that's offshore. So we'll just have a look at the recent data. You can actually see the recent data. So 35,000 worth of 189 nominations. So 35,000 people received their nominations. And you can see there's a special thing for offshore. And you can have a look at this if you want to. Just type in invitation round 189 and you will get this. And you could see the points they nominate at. Right, so let's see engineers. Engineers, it will be about, there's engineer draftsperson, which is 65. Chemical engineer will be at 85. Right, so you can have a look at the requirements. Electrical engineer draftsperson, 65. Electrical engineer technician, 65 points. So this is the points that they nominate at. Okay, usually between 85 to 65 points right now for engineers. And you can also see IT people, right? So ICT business analysts and specialists are at 85. Industrial engineers are 85. Right, and the list goes on. And they do nominate a fair bit of, you can see they nominate a fair bit of offshore. So onshore, offshore. Sometimes even offshore points is actually lower than onshore points. You can see here offshore is 65, onshore is 70. Right, but it does depend on the situation. Like surveyor here is 90 compared to 85. Right, and you could see from August of last year, we had about 60,000 people, 60,000 nominations. Right, and majority, or not majority, but around half will be overseas. Right?
Wow.
But the hard part is skill assessment, right? Getting the skill assessment done. That requires a fair bit of work.
So, William, what will be the turnaround time will be like to get the full skill assessment these days?
Usually, depending on the body, but right now, majority of bodies are very slow. It takes about 3 months.
3 months. Let's see if we go with Engineers Australia. Is it 3 months?
It will be 3 months. Yes, unless if it's stage 1. If you do CDR, it will be 3 months.
All right.
Yeah, on minimum grounds, because CDR, they need to evaluate the CDR, and they take a long time to do that.
Okay. Now let's say if we get our skill assessment done and we get a positive response from Engineers Australia, and then we go for a EOI, and then we move further. Is that it?
Yep.
Okay.
So we lodge an EOI. When you EOI right now, because we don't know invitation round. They said the invitation round should be on April. It didn't happen. Remember, I said it was around this time. They should, March and April, they should come. They didn't come. We hope it's going to come on May, but we don't know.
Okay.
Right. So we don't know which time they release the invitation round, but it should be a big one next time.
Yes. Right. Okay.
And once you get the invitation round, we lodge the visa. The visa turnaround time for 189 right now is about 3 months, which is one of the shortest out of all the visas.
That's pretty quick. That's not bad.
That's basically PR in 3 months.
True.
Compared to some other visas, which is waiting for 3 years.
Okay. So also, how much is the skill assessment cost with Engineers Australia? How much does it cost? A visa
Depends on the thing.
Yeah.
That depends on the thing. I'll check here. I think CDR is a little bit different. So see, The ones for us will be CDR based. So that's for Washington Accords. Where's the CDR based? So it should be Australian Engineers Qualification Assessment. That's not the one. That's employment. That's not the one. There we go. CDR.
Yeah.
So that will be about 935 by July 1st, 23. Currently, it will be 825. 825.
All right.
And for us, most likely, we would also want them to check the skill assess employment.
Yeah.
Okay. So in other words, we want to make sure that their skill employment time is also a valid skill employment, so that we don't. If we give that letter, they don't need to worry about it in migration level.
Okay.
So
one
we
more
want
thing.
to do the 1,200.
Okay. Let's say one more thing. Let's say for this visa, does client require job invitation from Australia?
No.
No. That's
Nothing.
amazing. All right. And one more thing. Let's say for a skill assessment, does Engineers Australia has different layers, like stage 1, 2, 3, 4, or we just do once?
We do once.
We do once.
Not job ready program. Yeah, no
Okay.
stages.
All righty.
So once your CDR passes, demonstration report passes, skill assessment.
All right. Okay. Let's move on then.
Yep. All right. All good. That'll be off.
Okay. All right. Any question, Professor?
नो सर त्यस्तो खासै केही त छैन है अब यो खासै बुझ्न त अब क्लियरली त बुझेन अब बिस्तारै हेर्दै गएपछि यहाँ टिपिरहेको छु हेरेपछि बुझेला
So I have recorded this video and I'll send it to you.
Excuse me, sir. I have a question.
Yes.
So once we receive the invitation from migration, and from where we'll be lodging the visa? As William sir said,
on the EOI homepage, where you lodged your EOI.
I didn't get the exact link, so that can you please say?
You won't have a link until you get the invitation.
Okay.
You won't have a link until you get the invitation.
Once we get the invitation,
so in other words, if you get invited, if you get invited on this EOI here, it will show lodge the visa, and you click that.
Okay.
Okay, can you see this page? So
Yes,
once you lodge your EOI, on this page, if they want to invite you, they will tell you you are invited and you want to lodge the visa by clicking that button. Okay, right now they don't have it because this client's not being invited.
William,
okay, so you will see it here.
Is there any limitation for the skilled worker?
Okay.
Hello?
What do you mean limitation?
I mean limitation of numbers?
No.
For the skill assessment, is there any limitation of number?
China, no.
China, eh?
No. You can do as many skill assessments as you want.
Okay.
If you have an engineer who does 3 or 4 different engineers, they can do that. They could do 4 or 5 engineering. Yeah.
So only last year there were, I think, 60,000 people invited. You said from India.
Not last year, just from August.
Oh, from August, and half of them were from outside Australia.
Around half of them, yeah. Because they're not in Australia anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. So yes. So 30,000 people are invited from across the world.
across the world. Any idea how much is the number from Nepal?
You have to dig into the real data. We can't see that yet. No, we have to go into these. But Nepal will be up there. Nepal will be up there because Nepal is the third largest migrant country to Australia. So they should be up there. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone. I'll see you in next video then. Okay. All good.